Welcome on in, everyone. It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our DFS live stream for this week's Sentry Tournament of Champions. Stoked to be back at golf after a little hiatus and to bring you guys what you need to know here before lock to go out there, build some DFS lineups, or go out there, play some outright bets or some prop slips over on Underdog and Prize Picks. So first off, welcome in to everyone wherever you are. Let's go out there, get off to a hot start here in 2024. And any questions that you guys have, you guys know the deal, right? Throw it down in chat as per usual. We'll talk through some of the important storylines heading into this week. We'll go through the weather, whether that's going to be a huge impact on DFS and betting. We'll talk through some of the strategies, some of the trends from last year, some DFS stuff, ownership, of course, over there for the large field contest. Then afterwards, we'll shift our focus. It's going to be a little bit more betting based here this year, both from the outright and, of course, the prop side. Down here in Florida, we got outright betting legalized down here in November. So was playing around with it a little bit during the fall swing, but now here in 2024, going to be a huge focus going forward. So there'll be more prop questions down there, a lot more outright questions, I assume, as the year goes on. So if you have any of those, feel free to go ahead and fire away as well. So we got Go Birds down there. What's going on, Rob? Hopefully you're having a solid Wednesday evening. Let's go ahead and get right on after it. So let's hop over to the data golf side, where we're going to take a look at some of the stats from last year just to make sure we're all on the same page. So of course, there's a whole course breakdown that I already have out, but this is an easy golf course, right? They want to give the players a little bit of a handshake heading into the season, and that is exactly what the Kapalua Plantation course will give you. So last year's scoring average was right around 4 under. Year before that, let's see, it was 4.78 under par. And even in 2021, when it played a little bit harder, right, still played to nearly a 3.7 under par average. So a lot of that is because it's a par 73. You do have quite a few scoreable holes, but on top of that, it's a resort style setup. It's wide open. You have some of the largest greens on the entire tour schedule. So you're more so looking at a putting contest on this kind of week than really anything else. So we'll talk about a few key stats. We'll revisit the model here on a Wednesday. But on a week like this, don't get bogged down into the stats, into your course models, the long-term historical fit, so on and so forth. Doesn't mean nearly as much at this kind of event because of its placement on the schedule. I talked about this during our DFS preview, but there's no lead-in form here, right? We don't really have an idea of what most of these players were doing the last 3-4 weeks. Some of them, in the case of like a Tommy Fleetwood, right, we haven't seen play over on this side of the pond for quite some time. There's a lot of unknowns to work with, which could be a huge positive in some cases. Or, of course, right, if somebody took some time off, they might look a little bit rusty here in the first event of the year. So, this is a week, I'm normally a huge data guy, right? We're normally running models, putting a lot of our analysis through that lens. It's not really a week to go out there and do that. Let's hop over to the weather side, and we can be pretty brief here because this week there aren't going to be any waves, right? We only have 60 players in the field, and anytime we have a no-cut setup, you're going to get most players going off in a pretty small period. So I believe the tee times are within like a 6-hour window. So if you're looking at showdown, you might be able to find a micro edge between the two waves. But if you're playing for a week-long contest, you're going to be hard-pressed to go out there and find a massive edge. So, we could look at Thursday. You'll see the winds are slightly higher in the afternoon. You can see the same thing out there for Friday on this forecast a couple days out. So if you're playing showdown, sure, play the AM guys, right? They're going to have ideal conditions, pretty receptive greens to work with. But there's not really an AM and a PM wave, right? You have guys that are smack dab in the middle that are really going to get a taste of both waves. If you're taking some of the guys going off at like 6, 7 AM local, you might get a slight advantage, right, compared to the guys going off super late. But it's not the type of advantage where we're locking in, right, a half a stroke or an entire stroke difference. So, like I said, we're going to mention the weather. We'll go through it here a little bit, but that's probably all we'll say about that end. If you're playing DFS, more so from the showdown side, you can try and take that micro edge. But for a week-long contest, it's not going to be a part of my process here for the Sentry. So let's cycle back to the DFS side now. See a few of you down in chat. First off, welcome. And now let's talk about some players, right? Let's talk about some game theory and the bulk of the show here. So what we're going to do here for 2024 is the ownership projections are always going to be on these live streams, as they're a good way to cater the talk, right? Go through some of the game theory side. Player pool, projections, modeling, all of that is going to stay behind the paywall. So the plays that we'll talk about, right, we'll reiterate some of the different core plays that I'm getting to. But just for the sake of protecting the plays, right, I don't want everyone that I'm taking to get steamed up. We are going to keep some of that behind the paywall here in 2024. So don't feel like that doesn't mean that I won't answer questions about players. Of course I will. I'll still give you my full takes on them. But just for the sake of the spreadsheet and all that here, just know that a lot of that is going to be blacked out. So first off, I got to Peach. First off, welcome back. An OG to the channel. M. Bosch, good to be back as well. Welcome on in, guys. It's a solid start to the year, a little clean slate for us. Here in 2024, one of my resolutions is to be better with my bet tracking. Because, we were doing a lot of the review streams last year. That is something that's going to continue here in 2024. But I want to go out there and start posting results. So what I'm going to do with a lot of my DFS stuff over there for the outright and betting side for sure is I'm going to be doing bet tracking over on Google Sheets. That'll be something that I'm posting on my Twitter quite often for my Patreons and all that. So you can see some of the swings in DFS, right? If you're a large field GPP player like me, you're going to see a lot of swings up and down on that DFS graph. Whereas with some of the top 20 markets, right, prop betting side of things, it's a little bit more consistent. So that's something that I want to make sure that you guys can have for that transparency and all that going forward. I miss you too, Bobby. We'll say that down, chat. What's going on, man? All right, let's talk through some of this player pool stuff here. So at the top of the board, you've got a lot of studs, and the ownership is pretty spread out, right? You've got Scotty Scheffler at nearly 30%. He's going to be your highest owned player, at least per my projections. You've got Xander Schauffele at number 2 at 26.5. And that's at least in terms of your top tier players, right? You've got a Colin Morikawa, Aberg that are also going to be relatively high owned. But if you're trying to pick and choose between these top end players, there's not going to be that one obvious pivot play that you can get to. That's going to be a third of the ownership of the rest of the players. So if there's somebody up here that you like, right, feel free to go ahead and take them in lineups because none of them are outrageously chalky. And like I said, you're not really going to get cute with any of them and try and differentiate to the field. So even a Victor Hovland, I thought he might see a little bit lower steam because of his poor track record around this track, but he's still at 23%. Scotty, right, he's always expensive, right, up there at $11,000. A lot of people have a hard time getting to him sometimes, but he's still at there, 29.7% right there. So Xander, of course, right at the top of my list heading into the week, is still one of my favorite plays heading into lock. I'm not that worried about this 26.5% number. So in my player pool, I have him at right around 50% exposure. In my higher dollar contest, it's closer to like 65% exposure. So he's in a good amount of like my single entries and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he's won here before. Great track record. We talked about the course fit there on Monday. A lot to love about Xander Schauffele at the Tournament of Champions. A few other names I'll throw out there. Victor Hovland, just because he hasn't played here before, hasn't played well here before, doesn't mean that he's not going to do it this week. In theory, is a perfect course fit for what we're looking for here, right? Can light it up with the putter, can get really hot on the greens. You saw him at East Lake, some of those events towards the end of the year, putt particularly well on Bermuda grass. So though his career numbers, you can see he's actually a slight loser on Bermuda for his entire career. Not something that has showed of late, right? He's been pretty good the last 3-4 times we've seen him on Bermuda grass. And you're talking about Victor Hovland, who ended the year as arguably the hottest golfer in all of golf. It's I don't know. I feel like people are sleeping on Victor Hovland, and I understand why he's like 23.3%. I also understand why people were overlooking him a little bit. Just selfishly, I was hoping we're going to get closer to like 20% or even maybe sub 20% ownership because that would have been an absolute smash play. So surprising, I'd say that he's up there at 23%, but I totally get it. I'd say that much with the Victor Hovland. Cantlay and Homa have played pretty well around this track. Homa pretty solid the last 2 times. Patrick Cantlay has been a little bit hit or miss here. You can see 4th place in 2 starts, a couple, average finishes. There were the 16th and the 13th place. But Max Homa, right, 3rd place last time around. And that's trending in the right direction after he was nowhere near the same golfer, right, 4 years ago when he played here. 4 years ago when he top 25'd, that was in like a 30-man field. He was hardly even making cuts week in and week out. And even just 2 years ago, right, when he finished T15 here, he was not near the same level golfer that he is today, right? And this T3 last year, he's a whole lot better than he was then, right, even comparatively. So Max Homa, I think it's going to be hard to evaluate him for some of the golf tournaments this year, just because I think he's a much better player now, right? He's a lot more well-rounded. $9,700 is more than a fair enough price tag. So I'm interested to see whether he comes in higher owned than this 20.6% mark. But at least as of right now, based on his track record coming in, right, the fact that he finished in the top 5 last year, this 20.6% number is well too low, right? He's kind of at the ownership mark that I was hoping that Victor Hovland would come in at, right? Hovland, guys like Max Homa don't have all the flashy stats of somebody like a Xander or Scotty Scheffler in a week like this, but they have their parts of the game, right, that they can lean into. And it's an elite tier player, right? You're just trying to choose your favorite 2 or 3 up here and build around them in your lineups. And you already know I like Xander quite a bit. Patrick Cantlay, I'll just say, every time I play Cantlay, he sucks. So this is everyone's warning out there. I am playing Patrick Cantlay this week. So if you want to play by that rule, that every time I play him, he sucks, then fade him this week. I couldn't blame you for doing so. Let's just say that much. See, any questions about the studs up here? Good to be back. Of course, David. What's going on? What's going on, Wilson? What do I think about Wyndham at 60-1? He seems too high in DFS. I agree with you there. But 60-1 seems reasonable. It does. So yeah, if you're going to get exposure, I would much rather get him in like a top 5 in outright betting market because he's a pretty volatile player, right? Wyndham Clark, I know, was much more consistent last year than he has been for much of his career. But he won a few times last year and he missed a few cuts at some real shitty events. So I think I'd probably be, tell me what the top 5 and top 10 numbers are out there for Wyndham Clark. I imagine there's probably some value there as well, right? And 60-1 for an outright. Yeah, he's probably should be closer to like 40-1 at the very most, I would say, for Wyndham Clark. He's not the sexiest pick. Like, I'd have a really hard time actually clicking Wyndham for an outright, but it's a pretty good case to be made for it, right? 60-1 is just a little bit of value out there. Heck, I even bet like an Eric Cole 3-ball for round 1. So Eric Cole's in a 3-ball. I think it's Brian Harmon's in his group, and it's Camilo Villegas, right? So I think that Ryan Harmon is the deserving favorite in that group. But based on odds, he was at plus 175. I just bet the number, right? If you're somebody that just likes value, is going to go out there, take the analytical approach, Wyndham Clark is a solid outright bet. So agree with you there for sure. Pretty good segue into this next tier, I'd say. We got a little coffee here, of course. I still got to build my lineups afterward. I have a set made that I'm okay with, but I've got to iron out some of the exposure levels. Like, I'm sure you guys know if you've used an optimizer before, tries to get your exposures where you want them. I've been tinkering with it for like an hour at this point. So we'll have to do that afterwards. And I definitely need my caffeine for that. What's going on, Nico? Any Hovland hangover concerns? Not really. I'm not super big into all those narratives and whatnot. He'll probably be good, man. I mean, he's had a few weeks, right, since all of that. He didn't play particularly well at the Hero, right, when he was out there. I think he'll be all right. I wouldn't worry about it all that much, or at least I'm not. Best plays under 7,000 besides Todd. Remind me, James, when we get closer to the value tier, and I will 100% get you. Luke, Eric Cole's going to keep it going. I hope so. I'll be playing him this week, Bobby. He seems legit for sure, right? Just won Rookie of the Year, so he has that going for him. In terms of the stat profile, I don't want to call it an unshakable kind of record, but the guy gets the job done, right? He goes out there, he's gaining on approach, he's gaining with the putter. He's done that very consistently for 6 to 9 months at this point. I think he's legit. I think he's chalky this week, right? He's going to get some ownership, but I think it's well worth it. Who are some good value guys to make the top 20? When we get to the outright betting section, we'll talk about some of the top 20 values, but it's that lower 7K range, right? So some of my top plays down here in the lower 7s, you know, I think Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd would fit that kind of picture. Those are the kind of guys you want to bet for top 20s. That's where I put a lot of my exposure when I'm betting top 20s, top 10s. You know, the elite tier guys, that's where I put my outrights in my top 5. So, you know, obviously there are different methods to the madness out there, but that's the way I take it. How's the hair these days? It's getting a little long, actually. I got to get it cut here soon, but it's pretty modest right now, James. But it's likely going to get real shorter and a little bit more put together, let's say, a little bit more neat. Clark, plus 800 for top 5, okay, and plus 350 for the top 10. And Florida betting's pretty sweet, isn't it, David? It's annoying with the ads. I have to say, the ads for Hard Rock Bet are just through the roof down here. You see them everywhere at this point. But plus 800 for a top 5. I might get an investment there, David. I might go bet him on Hard Rock Bet here too, right? Because that's what I have access to. If you like Wyndham this week, David, bet it. I may join you on that. Cole winning Rookie of the Year today. Gonna steam him at all, you think? yeah, maybe a few percent. He might go up like 1-2%. That would make some sense. What's going on, Samuel? Long time no see. What's going on, Bobby? Reverse those numbers for top 5 and top 10. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Yeah, I would say the top 5 for plus 800 makes quite a bit of sense. Camilo Vegas, whatever his odds for this week. Not sure. You can check on one of the sites. I probably wouldn't bet him though. Just too strong of a field. I have a lot of merchandise for Camilo. He's one of my favorite like low-key players, but probably not the best week for him. You hope Cole plays bad this week, so he's lower owned next week. There's always that aspect too, right? You hope he gets steamed down for next week. Do you like any 6K guys? I do. How many and who? So we'll touch on who later on, but there's about 8 players I'm playing down there. Think you're fading Chris, fading Cole, so he'll probably win. That's also very typical DFS, right? You fade a guy, goes out there and wins, but you don't make the rolls. That's my case with Patrick Cantlay, right? I mean, guys, I told you I'm playing Patrick Cantlay this week. Don't play him. He's there's no cut to miss, right? He's not going to miss the weekend, but Patrick Cantlay, he's not going to finish in the top 10. Watch. I love Thigala and Wyndham Clark may go over the field on those. Wyndham Clark, look at that ownership number, right? So I know we kind of skipped over some of the ownership in this lower 9K range, but 8.2%. A lot of leverage to be had there. And you said Thigala too. Yeah, a little bit more chalky with Thigala, but I'm with you. I like Thigala this week. I think he's well worth the like 13% that he's at. So this lower 9K range, I got a little distracted there. My apologies. If you have any questions about any specific players, feel free to go ahead, throw those down in chat. But this lower 9K range is really low in terms of your ownership, right? Not a lot of exposure a lot of the field is getting here. So you got Terrell Hatton, who I love, right, at 10.8%. We talked about how I like the skill set fit, right? Doesn't have a track record at all around here. It'll be his first ever start at Kapalua. But in theory, right, good, long driver, right, good wedge player, solid putter, should play well at this golf course. So this is more of a course fit than anything out there. But yeah, if you like Brian Harmon, right, same kind of thing. He's a good wedge player, really good putter. You can take him at 8.6%. We've already done a lot about Wyndham Clark, right? He's 8.2%. Tommy Fleetwood at only 11.2%. Surprising, right? Normally he's up there at like 14, 15% at the very least. But because you have a super chalky Colin Morikawa next to him, Tom Kim, who I love, right? 18.2%. Jordan Spieth even getting some attention on this kind of slate. Just not everyone can play Tommy Fleetwood, right? There's just guys around him that people like a little bit more. So the ownership in this lower 9K, top of the 8K range is extremely polarized. And in the case of many players, you're getting infinite leverage spots. I mean, 8.2% on, especially in like a 9K player for just a 59 player field is extremely low ownership, right? Like for a normal week of DFS, you're talking about like a 1-2% owned guy in the 9K range. It's the type of spot that in a large field GPP, you throw in a Hatton, you throw a Wyndham Clark into a lineup, and you really only have to differentiate maybe one other spot out of your 6, and you're going to be good to go, right? You're going to have the leverage you need. You're not going to duplicate yourself in most circumstances out there, even in the large field GPPs. It's there's a time and place for taking chalk, right? Taking Xanders, matching them up with Colin Morikawa if you wanted to, right? At nearly 30% ownership. But the rest of your lineup better be damn different to the field. You better be jamming in, right? At least 1 or 2 spots of differentiation. Here in the 8K range, Ludwig Aberg, right, getting a lot of attention. But I've got to say, he's a piece of chalk that makes sense, right? 25%, I don't think is too out of hand with the Ludwig. He's proven himself to probably be a top 5, maybe top 5, almost certainly a top 10 player out there in the world at his age. And he's only $8,700. So I think by the end of the year, you're going to see Aberg's probably a top 5 player on tour. I believe if he wins this week, he'll already be in the top 10 of the OWGR. And by the end of the year, I've given this hot take to a few people. I think there's potential for him to be a top 3 player in the world. So if, obviously I'm very bullish on his future, right? That's extremely evident with what I'm saying right there. But if he's $8,700 and I think he's that kind of a talent, it shouldn't matter if he's 25% owned, right? You're playing him on a week like this. So depending on what you think about Aberg and his future, that's probably going to shape your decision on him this week. But if you're one of the people out there, and there's a lot of them, right, that believe in his talent level, you're probably playing him at $8,700, right? Even if he is that chalky compared to the rest of this range. And I've heard a few analysts say it's like, 25% is too much. Is he actually worthy of being better than, twice as likely to succeed as a Ricky Fowler? I mean, if we were comparing Aberg to Scotty Scheffler, I think you could say, yeah, right? Like Scotty is probably twice as likely to succeed as somebody like a Ricky Fowler. Aberg might be that kind of player. That's how I look at him, okay? That's my take on it. I've been wrong before. I'm going to be wrong again, right? It's going to happen a lot with how many takes I put out there, but that's my take on Aberg. I think he's a top 5 player in the world. Down here at the bottom of the 8K range, you've got a lot of leverage spots too. So guys like Cam Young aren't crazy in ownership. Even Sam Burns is like 8.7%. The only real chalk down here is you're getting a little steam on somebody like Tony Finau. And then we've got Sanjay at 17.1%. So the Sanjay chalk is just based on talent level, right? He hasn't been playing particularly well towards the end of last season, or wasn't playing particularly well towards the end of last season. But at $8,100, right, he fits the golf course, right? He fits pretty much every golf course out there because of how well-rounded his game is. It's more of just like a value in terms of points per dollar value. So if you're going to fade anybody, like I'd rather fade Sanjay that you're just playing because it's a good price than Aberg, who's potentially like $2,000 too cheap, right? Like that's, to me, right, if I believe in a talent, right, I'll play somebody regardless of that. Just for full transparency, I'm playing Sanjay too this week. Like I said, it's not who you play, it's how you play them, right? If I'm going to take chalk like a Sanjay and I want to play him with like a Xander up top, right? I'm going to take 2 real chalky players. Well, that's when Brendan Todd comes in handy, right? Brendan Todd's like 6% owned. He's going to give me plenty of leverage down there in the top of the 6K range. You throw in one other sub 5% owned player, and it doesn't matter, right? So I know a lot of people like to get bogged down on the chalk, right? Like to, talk about certain players being unplayable, so on and so forth. No one's unplayable, right? The only time someone's like unplayable is if they were like 40, 50% owned on this kind of slate. Like, let's say Scotty was like 50% owned, right? And a 59 player field. Maybe he's unplayable, right? But like when the highest owned player in this range is like Morikawa at 29%, like he's not unplayable, right? Is he chalk? Is he higher owned than he should be? For sure, right? At $9,100. But you can make it work, right? There's a 6-player lineup, right? You have 5 other spots to get plenty different to the field. And you can even leave salary on the table, right? If you really want to take a bunch of chalk together, just leave some salary on the table, right? That's always a way to get different. You're going to have a little bit of trouble with leverage, right? There's that component too. So you're not always just worried about differentiating. But if you really want to take a lot of chalk, there are ways to make it happen. Let's just say that much. Let's see. Any questions? Where are we at? Yeah, no waves, so no concerns unless you're wanting a micro edge. That is correct. And yeah, you missed the weather chat, but you didn't miss very much, so I probably wouldn't even go back. Camilo Villegas is going off at 57 to 1 odds. Is that what you're saying there? I heard you guys talking about him. Yeah, I think there's a market for him, Wilson. Maybe it is in DFS, right? I mean, a top 10, top 15 would probably be pretty good for him. But yeah, I wouldn't bet him to win. Let's just say that much. Probably not the best place to bet him at that kind of number. Let's see. Did I see the new site Bet the Number Golf? Yeah, I'm actually partnered with Bet the Number Golf. That's something that just came up today, actually, Bobby. So I've been talking with DB about it for about the last month at this point. And I may actually bring it out for this video, Bobby. I got to check to make sure that my agreement was sent back to me. I sent off my signature. As soon as he sends it back, we're good to go. I'll double check on that for you because, yeah, I'm partnered with them. It's a badass site. I love it. And hey, if I'm able to talk about it on stream here, we'll do it. Love seeing the ownership on the board, of course. I think it's a good way to talk through the slate too, right? To have something to talk about there. And he said you're going to be a guest on the show or something coming up. Yep. You're saying Shaq and Kobe in the one spot. Yeah, dude, they're some of the funniest guys out there. So yeah, we're gonna do a bunch of collabs this year, and I think that one's for the Masters that we're doing sometime here soon. So let's see what we've got going on down here in the 7K range. And I got to double check on the bet the number thing because I want to show you guys what we're working on, right? Obviously, I think they showed it on their page earlier this week. There's a lot of badass course stuff you can do on there that is going to help my process, and it's going to help you guys by proxy, right? With me being able to do a little bit better research. Let's see. Let's do a double check on the equipment. Yep, looks like we're good to go. All right, so let's move on to the 7s. So down here in the 7K range, ownership is pretty spread out. There are a few pieces of chalk you got to worry about, but for the most part, right, like 80% of the 7K range, I would classify as a pivot, right? So the names that would be the exception to that rule would be a Cam Davis at 16%. He's your highest owned player in this range. JT Poston is 12%. Eric Cole, right? We mentioned him being chalky at about 15% ownership. Henley Thigala getting their steam themselves. And then, yeah, that's about it, right? Outside of that, I mean, like Corey Connors, 9% is just fine. And yeah, everyone else is in the single digit range. So the ownership, like I said, you don't got to worry about it unless you're talking about a few specific players. And you can play an Eric Cole all you want. I mean, hell, you can throw Cam Davis into that same lineup if you're taking a pivot up here in the 8 and 9K range, right? If you started your lineup with like a Terrell Hatton, right? Maybe down here in the 8K range, rather than an Aberg, you took a Ricky Fowler, then who cares, right? If your two 7K options are Eric Cole and Russell Henley, right? Who cares if they're, twice as owned as the other guys down here, because you're so much different up here towards the top of the board that you have the differentiation that you need. So when you're building lineups, I've actually started to do a lot more by hand because of that. Now I have optimizers. Obviously I run my own. I have my own custom optimizer, which makes things a little bit easier. But even, somebody with that kind of capability, right? I could do a lot of custom roles, a lot of different custom lineup building stuff out there in my optimizer. I still like doing it by hand because there's just a little bit of an art form, right, to going out there and building a lineup, right? Adjusting your strategy based on some of the players that you've taken before. And to have that built into an optimizer is pretty tough to do, right? It's tough to go out there, have something that is adjusting after every single pick. It's possible, right? I do it from time to time, but of late, it's been a lot more hand building for me. So I want to throw that out there, right? Some of these higher owned plays down here. And in terms of, higher owned plays that I like, I think Eric Cole has to be at the top of that list, right? He's number 5 in recent form. He's your, winner of the Rookie of the Year, really solid on Bermuda grass. Like, I understand why he's that high of ownership. Cam Davis, right? A high birdie percentage player, has played exceptionally well around this golf course. Good form coming in. I understand why he's getting the steam. And frankly, even at 16%, if you can make it work, if you're already different enough with your first 2-3 players in a lineup, then take Cam Davis, right? Like it's okay if you're going there in some scenarios. So I think in cash games, in single entries, I like guys like Eric Cole, Cam Davis even more. For GPPs, love the Brendan Todds of the world, right? Love the Denny McCarthy's that are just a little bit lower owned and maybe don't have as high of a median projection. Maybe they're a little bit riskier of plays, right, compared to the Eric Coles, the Cameron Davises, but they have the same kind of upside, right? Like Brendan Todd could top 5 at this event. Same kind of level as like an Eric Cole, Cam Davis. Same thing with the Denny McCarthy, maybe a slightly lower win rate, a slightly lower hit rate, we should say, for those top 5, those top 10s, but they're lower owned, right? So depending on what contest that you're entering, that should kind of favor or shape your strategy, I should say, for some of these lower tier players. See, anyone else I want to point out in particular? Siwoo Kim intrigues me. Playing Siwoo Kim this week, okay? High birdie percentage player. The one real reason I played Siwoo this week is he's won the American Express, and that's a golf tournament where you got to get to nearly 30 under par, right? And if we're going to get calm conditions this time around, you're likely to see a winner probably close to like 30 under par. So, yeah, Siwoo Kim, already an absolute madman. We'll take aim at every single pin. I play him when a lot of people won't get there on him, right? He's a polarizing figure, right? Sometimes there'll be mega chalk out there. Sometimes there'll be a low-owned play like he is this week. I prefer him in that second example, right? When he's going to be a relatively low-owned player. Who else did I want to point out? Justin Rose at 6.7%. Really good Bermuda grass putter, low ownership, right? Because he's got a relatively chalky Henley and Thigala around him. Intrigues me. Can get hot in a hurry and has, showed an ability to go low. JT Poston, same thing, right? His tour wins have come at events like the John Deere Classic, right? Where you have a winner that's like 20 plus under par. There's an art form to going out there and making birdies in bunches. A lot of times it's players that are good putters. He checks that box, right? He's one of the better Bermuda grass putters in this range and a decent form coming in. So, a little bit of ownership on JT Poston, right? He is there at 12%, but I understand it. And he's got the kind of horsepower. And that's what I like to call it. Is birdie or better horsepower, right? Is a player actually capable of getting to like a 25, 30 under par? That matters, right? At the Byron Nelson, it matters. At this event, it matters, right? How low can you go? There's just certain guys out there that aren't really, built to go low, right? They're not programmed to be aggressive and go after every single pin. Tom Kim is the opposite of that, right? Siwoo Kim is the exact opposite of that. Just players that have no fear out there, that go after every single pin, and at a birdie fest can get the job done. Let's catch up on chat, see if there's any questions down there, and then we'll talk about some of the 6K range, as I know a few of you guys were asking about before. Let's see. That's right. Am I doing any one and done contests? Not as of right now, David. I have a week until a lot of them close to go out there and enter. But the unfortunate part is, David, is I'm really forgetful when it comes to those kind of contests. And like 2 out of the 3 times I've done a one and done league, I've just like forgot to enter plays and just completely forgotten about the league. So a lot of times those one and done leagues are just a little bit of like a throwaway for me. I've got to get better at it, right? If I had an app on my phone, I set a reminder, that sort of thing, I would be just fine to do a one and done league. But I've had a track record of, screwing that up in the past. So I don't really like them, but I've got to get back into it. Let's see. Oh, you're saying he goes off at 12? Okay. Yeah, I don't think the weather's a huge thing this week, so he should be good to go, no matter what the tee time is. David says, Xander and Rogers, or going with Morikawa and Hadman. I like the first one more. I like going for like the more studs and duds kind of approach, right? A little bit more of an expensive Xander, a punt there with Rogers. If you're in a large field GPP, right, you're playing for upside, it's the first combination for me, but that's a pretty close one. Sam says, should you need to worry about some cumulative ownership for this tournament? For sure, Sam. You should probably keep here's the best way to do it, Sam, right? So cumulative ownership is a little bit outdated, right? You probably want to look at the product ownership rather than your cumulative ownership. And in this kind of contest, or I should say it should depend on your contest. Wow, completely said that wrong there. It depends on the contest you're entering, Sam, but your product ownership is what you need to look at, right? So if you're playing in a contest with like 50,000 entries this week, your product ownership should be like 0.001%, right? Because you don't want to be duplicating yourself with more than 5 lineups at the very most. Ideally, you want it less than 1, right? So if you're playing in like a single entry, that sort of thing, your product ownership can probably be like 1%. And that would be really high. That would be taking a lot of chalk together, but you can do that in a single entry, especially if it's a smaller field contest. If you're playing in like a large field GPP, I mean, you got to get that down to 0.001% in terms of your product ownership. I mean, you got to get it down. So look at the product ownership. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there are a few videos out there that'll teach you how to calculate it, right? And what that means out there in large field GPPs. But yeah, I would go with product ownership. Make sure you cater it towards your contest. Was it easy to create my own optimizer? Absolutely not. No. It took me a long time and I needed a lot of help, Parker. I am not like a programmer by trade, right? I went to school as an electrical engineer, was an engineer by trade for a few years out of college. And so I took some of my CS stuff. Like I know 4 programming languages, never did any real work in CS, right? So there's a different level between just learning it in school and then using it in practice. It took me a long ass time, but if you're somebody that knows, Python is going to be especially helpful if you're doing stat stuff, but to build, something like an optimizer, you're going to have to know actual coding, right? You're going to have to actually make an application, that sort of fun stuff. So it takes quite a bit of background and it takes a lot of time. So no, not easy. Do you cap your recommended max exposure? On almost every player I do, Sam. Yeah. My optimizer, right, it'll spit out 100% of the top play on the board. So yeah, I have to set caps, and it's normally about 2x the field on the exposure. It'll go up and down a little bit, right? Sometimes it'll be like 2.5, 3x the field. Sometimes it'll only be like 1.5x the field. But yeah, close to 2x most of the time. Do I like the Postman? Absolutely. We just talked about that, so that answers your question. But yeah, great on approach and world-class putter. Agree with you, man. You're spot on. Yep. Crazy how that works sometimes. But yeah, I'm spot on, right with you there. Tom Kim thoughts. He's a core play. I love him, Wilson. So thing about Tom Kim I like is that same kind of mindset. He's aggressive, right? I mentioned the fact that I want guys that are taking aims at pin. He's a good wedge player from 125 yards, and he's one of the best players in the world in those buckets. And solid on Bermuda grass. He's not the best Bermuda putter. You can see he's only gaining 0.16 strokes per round. But towards the end of last season, where you have a lot of Bermuda grass courses, he started to gain strokes in bunches, right? So I think he may have found something with the putter that combined with a stellar tee to green game is it's deadly, right? So I like him there for sure. 8,900. He's getting some attention, right? He's like 18% owned, but Like I said, you can make that work. Ownership's overrated, okay? Like, it matters for your lineup. It doesn't matter for players. You can play chalk as long as you're taking pivots. And I'm going to say that over and over again. It's another resolution here for 2024 is to make people less scared of chalk, because you don't got to be scared of it, especially if you've been playing NFL this year. I think you may have learned that. Let's just say that much. Yo, Luke, what's up, bro? Golf is back and life is good again for sure. I wish it was earlier tomorrow. I've already realized that we're going to be waiting all day for this golf to start because it doesn't start until like noon. But hey, we can't complain, right? We've got it back. Any love for Kitayama? If you're looking for a low-owned flyer, I've got love for him in that scenario. But, in general, he's not my favorite play this week. But everyone agrees with that, right? That's why he's like 2.5% owned. So if you're playing in a large field GPP and you're taking a bunch of chalk, let's say you took Xander, you like Morikawa, and maybe even play Ludwig Aberg, right? You want to play that big three combo of like super chalky players. That's where Kitayama comes in handy, right? He's like the lowest, I believe, is actually the lowest owned player on the slate, tied with Echeverria actually for the lowest owned player on the slate. You need somebody like that, or Griot, right? He's like 3% owned on this sort of slate to make that lineup work. And that's where I like him this week. Not my favorite play, but he has a time and place. Thanks for the answer, of course. Thoughts on Hideki this week? He's a tricky one for me. I don't think I get Hideki right very often. And this is my take on Hideki, right? I usually play him at harder golf courses. His putter is so hit or miss, right? Like when his putter's on, he'll go out there, he'll make everything, he'll gain 4 or 5 strokes with the flat stick. And when, most of the time, like 75 to 80% of the time, he loses a stroke per round on the greens, right? It's, infuriating, right? He's the king of going out there, top 20, but not getting into contention. It's not my favorite week for him, but based on my track record, kind of like what it is with Cantlay, right? I don't usually get Hideki right. So if I don't like him this week and I'm not playing him, I'll say that much too. He's not in my player pool. Then maybe you should play him, because my track record on Hideki ain't that great. Did Scotty fix the putting? It looks like he may have, but I want to see it, right, Antonio? I want to see it a few more times before I buy it. Just like Luke List, right? He found his putting before the break there. Lucas Glover, right, found the putting before the break there. I have a really hard time believing that that's going to continue into this year. So I am always willing to be proven wrong. I will be definitely tracking all 3 golfers to see what's going on over the next few events, but I'm not a huge believer. Let's say Scotty, I'm much more a believer in than the rest. List and good old Glover, I'm not expecting that to continue here in 2024. But Scotty Scheffler, he's working with a new putting coach, right? So he at least has a tangible reason for why he might be able to keep it going. I'm not sure on the other guys, like especially Lucas Glover. I think the whole broomstick putter thing is a little blown out of proportion. Let's say that much. Thoughts on Rahm going to live? It's so weird not having a defending champion. Yeah, I forget who had that happen last year, but there was another event where we didn't have the defending champion in the field, and it felt weird. We'll probably feel that same kind of awkwardness, right, when they show the highlights from last year, right? Jon Rahm winning, and of course they inevitably have to mention Live Golf. I don't really have a take on him going to Live. I think in 2 months there's going to be some sort of agreement out between the PGA Tour and Live that guys are going to be playing on both tours. I don't think it'll actually go into place like this year, but by the time we get to 2025, I think it's very likely that these guys are playing all the signature events, right? Whether the signature event is like the Players Championship and you're inviting guys like Brooks, Cam Smith back to come back and play that, or even having PGA Tour players go out there and play some of the bigger live events, right? The ones that they want to make the signature events for that tour. So I think for this year, it's going to be awkward. I think starting the event in January rather than in the fall, right, is already going to make this year awkward. But hopefully, and this, fingers crossed for this, the next couple of weeks we get that news that the merger goes through, because I think that's the best case scenario for golf, right? Is that they can get everyone playing in the same field again. That's all I'm hoping for, is that they can rally it together. We can get some of the world's best playing for like non-majors for once. And I think everyone would feel pretty good about that. Holy crap, did I see Finau's new putting stroke? I did. It's like the basketball at the free throw line, right? You sit in there, you do a couple dribbles, you go out there and you throw the free throw. I understand the logic. I think Randall was trying to rationalize it the last time we saw it on TV. But yeah, it's you wouldn't want to do it yourself. Let's say that much. It's not something you want to repeat. All right, let's talk about these 6K golfers. So in terms of pure punts, right, we mentioned Brendan Todd at $6,900, but there are some legit names down here this week, right? There are some guys we can take down here in the 6K range. So a few that kind of stick out to me are putters, and they're guys that can get hot with the flat stick. And Adam Shank, one of those kind of players. Taylor Moore can get hot with the putter. He's not been playing well, right? He's my number 59 ranked player in terms of recent form ranking. But we've seen crazier things happen. Let's just say that much. You're looking for guys that can get hot with the flat stick. Mackenzie Hughes, exceptional putter, right? Akshay Bhatia can get hot with the flat stick. Patrick Rogers, right? I know we had a question about him before. He's only $6,100 and pretty good putter on Bermuda, right? Gains 0.31 strokes per round. If you're going to take a shot down here, I like a lot of the guys that can get hot with the putter, right? Like we have some iron specialists like a Benny Ann that, I think at harder golf courses, it would be a really solid play to make a cut. He's very consistent. The tee to green play, right, is good to get you to the weekend, right? Helps you go out there, get FedEx cut points. But at a no cut event, there is no cut, right? We're not worried about consistency. In GPPs, we need spike performances, right? We need guys to go out there and shoot like 20, 25 under par this week. And the players that I think have the best chance to do so are either streaky or really good putters. So a lot of the guys I'm taking are putters. Tom Hoagie has a good track record here, so you could take a look at him. But in general, if you're trying to use your own process to go down here and find your plays for this week, birdie or better percentage, shots gained putting on Bermuda grass, and then I might look at a little bit of the wedge stuff, right? Take a look at those 125 to 150. Take a look from the 50 to 125 range, right, in terms of your proximity buckets. But yeah, a lot of putters. For me, a lot of it is putting based. I'll say that much. It's a putting contest. You've heard a few players call it that, right? When the scoring average is going to be 4 or 5 under par, you're going to get a lot of these random players that just spike a good putting week, and that's how they get into the top 10. So that's the way that I'm taking it down here in the 6K range. But there's a lot of different ways you could play it. I mean, if you want to make this an irons week, then go for it, right? Just if you're playing in large field GPPs, you're going after correlation to begin with. I could understand doing the wedge stuff a little bit more, but for me, it's a putting week. It's a putting contest. It's the easiest way to go out there, gain 4 or 5 easy strokes to the field. Tom Hoagie might do it with the irons, right? Like I mentioned, he's had a pretty good track record here, but do we think Vince Norman, for example, is going to gain 6 strokes approach? Like probably not, right? Do we think Andrew Putnam? Actually, Putnam's not a great example. Putnam could gain 6 strokes approach. He's a damn good wedge player, so maybe we don't use him as an example. But like Seamus Power, right? He can get real hot with the putter real quick. He's probably not gaining 10 strokes tee to green this week, right? Like let's be realistic. The guys down here that are the most likely to pop are the guys that are going to gain like 5-6 strokes putting. That's my take on it. Again, I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again for sure. But that's my take on this week. Better now. All right, I fixed my mic. Sorry about that. It's not a Gsluke live stream if his mic doesn't unplug. So yeah, let's get that out of the way. Okay, thoughts on EVR now that we got the technical issues out of the way. He won on the DP World Tour. He did, that's correct. And he looks like he's more confident in his game. I think the DP World Tour win is always a plus, but I think in general, he's hard to predict, right? EVR's a bit of a wild card, to say the very least, right? He's a very inconsistent player, but when he's on, he can win golf tournaments, right? You've seen that on the PGA Tour. What event was it that he won like 2 years ago? I think it was an alternate field event, right? Went out there, got his first tour win in quite some time. Went on the DP World Tour, was able to get a win out there on the fall swing. I think he's on the ascent. I think he's a player that's going to get better over the next year or so. But, if he's a GPP flyer, I think it makes sense there, right? You take a few shots on him. Maybe you're somebody that thinks that he's going to have a solid 2024 season and you want to get over the field in most cases. That makes sense to me, right? But like from an outright bet, like top fives, core play kind of perspective, I'd be a little bit hesitant there, right? Like he's not somebody that I'm going to be investing in week and week out. But as a flyer, especially when he's going to be relatively low owned. I think it makes a lot of sense, honestly. Like, I'd rather play him than Luke List, right? Luke List is like 13% owned this week. If you're looking for a flyer, you need to differentiate down here in the 6K range. Like, that's what EVR is there for, right? He's only 7% owned, right? There are lower owned guys here. They're closer to 3 to 5% ownership, but you're not going to die with a 7% owned player. I guess that's okay. He's got some upside out there. Maybe not my favorite play this week, but I understand the thought process for sure. Svensson is getting major disrespected with his pricing. Totally agree with that. What is he, like $6,600? Yeah, he's probably, if I was going to price him, he'd definitely be above a Nick Taylor and an Adam Hadwin. That's for sure. He's a better Canadian golfer than those two. So you'd put him above those two. $100 golfer, actually probably 7,300. I think Harris English, pretty good comp. Danny McCarthy too, right? It would probably be a pretty good comp for Adam Svensson. So yeah, if you're looking for just value in terms of your price tag, I think he fits that, right? Recent form ranking is through the roof. Spoiler alert, I'm playing him this week, right? He's only 8% owned, being a little bit disrespected. Totally agree with you there. And he's a little streaky too. BTN has him ranked high in their custom model. Yeah, let's actually bring it up, boys. I'm 90% sure we can do this. So I'm not even going to take a chance on it. We're just going to go to my email and make sure that we are indeed good to go. Because if we are, we're going to bring up Bet the Number, and I'll show you guys what we keep alluding to out here. Yep, we're good to go. All right, we'll bring up Bet the Number. What? Oh, not Bet365. Bet the Number. There we go. All righty, so this is a new partnership that we're doing here in 2024. The Tour Junkies have started a site in partnership with a few guys that do data for tour players. And the site that they've put together is just absolutely outstanding. It's still in production. They still have a lot going on with it, a lot that's going to be added to this website. But what I really like about it, and like I had a meeting with DB, we talked about, the site, what it was built for and all that kind of stuff. But when he showed me this course tab over here, I like stopped him and I was like, dude, please, like, I want to be a part of this website, because if you guys can see here, all these stats and whatnot, or like stuff you can find on Data Golf all over the place, but it's not easy to access like it is here. And it's not as easy to aggregate it on other sites as it is over here on Bet the Number. And what I love that you can do here, right, is you can take like the last 2 years of data and get averages for what the field did over those years. So like for prop betting, this is absolute gold. If you're somebody that bets props, you know how hard it is to calculate a lot of this stuff by hand. Bet the Number does it for you, right? So if you just want to look at 2023, we can look at a lot of these stats, and this is going to be immeasurably helpful when we go over some of the prop stuff here in just a little bit. But even for DFS, right? You go over here to the custom model. I know this is what Bobby was alluding to before, but like if we bring up the standard model for the website and we just sort this by model rank, you'll get what their take is for this week. And they have those stat guys, like I mentioned, that are working with tour players doing this analysis. So they really know their shit, right? I believe, I forget what players he was saying that their head of the website works with, but it's a lot of your big name tour players. Like it was most of the top 5, top 10. So you can see up here, they have Aberg as their number 1 play, which makes a lot of sense, right? I'm huge on his future, so obviously they're very big on it as well. They got Eric Cole up there at number 5, which you can't argue with based on how the guy was playing. But yeah, look at this. Just like good old Bobby Bombs was saying, Svensson's down there at number 8, and he's $6,600. Like that's ridiculous. Loves JT Poston. It loves Eric Van Rooyen, who, of course, we were just talking about with a few people down there in chat. A lot of this is based on the model for this week, right? And with Eric Van Rooyen, let's see, this birdie or better percentage tab, you can see for Eric Van Rooyen, he's got a 29.44 birdie or better rate over his last, I think it's 24 rounds that they're using for this model. Like that's absurd, right? And at a golf course where you got to get to 25, 30 under par to win, that's why he's modeling so well on this kind of website. So I love this. I mean, look at this. You click on a player, it gives you a breakdown of some of their recent form metrics, shots gained, all that sort of fun stuff. And what I really like is, we didn't show this on the course tab earlier, but at the bottom, the advanced metrics that they have. They've got approach shot distributions. They show where players are hitting iron shots on this golf course. They show where players are hitting around the green shots from. You can see like they have bunker, rough, fairway, fringe, all of that down there. Putting distributions, right, where most of your putts are coming from, your actual make percentages from different percentages. It's data that sometimes you can find on websites. A lot of times you can't. Like you're not really going to find this approach shot distribution stuff broken down by type anywhere. Even if you can, it's usually not usable, right? It's not in a visualization like this. It's a lot harder to come by. You kind of have to scrape it and use it in your own system. Like for example, right? You can find some of this data on the PGA Tour site, but it's all just raw data numbers, right? It's not useful like you have here on Bet the Number. So I like a lot of the data that they have. It's just ridiculous how detailed you can get over there. And my favorite part, like I mentioned, is the stuff for props. Like it makes my research process for props 10 times easier. Like you can see last year, the birdie average was 5.56. Birdie average back in 2022, right, was 5.83. I was doing a lot of this by hand, right? Now, I wasn't adding up birdies for every player and all that, but I was taking raw data and then obviously calculating averages, all sort of fun stuff. This site just does it all for you. It saves me time. It's probably going to save a lot of you guys time out there. And if you guys want to sign up, I'll go ahead and put a link down in chat. I wasn't prepared to do this today, but thank you, Bobby, for reminding me. Code Gsluke out there to sign up. So I'll throw that down in chat as well. Obviously, you guys know how to spell Gsluke, but just in case you don't, I'll throw it down there in chat for you guys. It's ridiculously helpful. I'm going to be using it in a lot of my content going forward, especially course breakdowns. This is the absolute nuts when it comes to the course breakdown angle. And I know they don't have, at least I believe, maybe they do, maybe I'm wrong about this, they don't have a lineup optimizer yet. I'm assuming they're going to be adding a bunch of functionality in the future, right? So like on here, you've got the custom model course stuff, player pages right over here right now. I'm imagining they have a lot of different plans for the future, right? So whether it's like prop tools, betting tools, all that sort of fun stuff, I'm excited what they have to offer, and I'm excited to see what they come up with. So that's Bet the Number over there. What we can look at here is I'm going to look at their custom model again. Let's see if anyone else really sticks out. So we pointed out Svensson EVR a little bit before. Luke List is another value play. They have ranked highly. Cam Davis, right? Another highly ranked value play. Benny Ann, surprisingly. Okay. You guys heard me. I'm not super big on Benny Ann this week, but they like him a lot more than I do. So, maybe I'll need to look back at that and see why, right? He's popping up in the model like he is. So it's always good to have different opinions out there in your models, cross-reference across different sites and whatnot. And a lot of data that you can get here from Bet the Number, and a lot of, I think, really valuable analysis as well. Now let's hop over here to Draftkings. So let's see, any questions on Bet the Number? You joined late, but did I talk about Connors? I didn't. I worry about the putter a little bit. It is getting better. You're right about that, Antonio. It is getting a lot better here, but I like him at harder golf courses. Again, maybe it's a blind spot for me, right? Like Benny Ann, Corey Connors, those ball striking first type of players, I like taking them at harder tracks. I'm not huge on him this week, right? But I understand it. He's a hell of a player. They have matting ratings, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I saw that. Is that website free? It is not. You got to pay a subscription. But it's, in my opinion, it's a lot better than most of the other databases out there. And it just started. It came out like literally 2 days ago, and it's already got more detailed data than most of the websites out there. So I can only imagine that they're going to add a whole lot to that. Let's say that much. All right, let's talk through some lineup building stuff. We're going to be pretty quick with the lineup building section because we talked about a lot of this, right? Going through some of the stuff earlier. But then we're going to talk about props. So if you're here for props, here for underdog, prize picks, all that sort of fun stuff, we're going to touch on that in just a few minutes. So if you're putting lineups together for this week, right, it's about how you play your lineup, not necessarily who you're playing. So if you're going to take those chalky pieces, let's throw more Kaba in there, and let's throw Aberg just to be as chalky as humanly possible with our first three plays. I think this is, pretty tough to get done if you want to go out there and build a unique lineup with this set of three, but it's not impossible, right? To get this done is when Kurt Kitayama comes in real handy, right? At $7,400, only 2.5%. It's when somebody like, let's find a real low-owned play. Like a Jason Day would be real handy. Like I hate Jason Day this week. Let's be honest. I'm not playing Jason Day in my player pool. But if you started with this combination of three players and then you took a Kitayama, a Jason Day, like you're almost different enough right there, right? You go down here to $6,300. You take somebody like maybe a Seamus Power, right, who's exceptionally low owned. Eric Van Rooyen, we mentioned, I think he's an excellent play. But because he started with an Aberg, a Morikawa, and a Schauffele, I don't even know if Day and Kitayama are enough leverage, right? Like you probably want to consider either leaving salary on the table or taking someone down towards the bottom that's really low owned. So, you could throw Patrick Rogers on there, right? He's relatively low owned and you'd be leaving $200 on the table. You could take a Seamus Power, spend all of your salary, right? But take somebody that's going to be sub 5% owned. You could throw in a Nick Hardy, right? Leave some salary on the table and take a relatively low owned player. If you're going to take those three chalky players, it has impact on the rest of your lineup, right? Like here in the 8K range, I told you guys, I hate Jason Day. Like I'm not playing him this week. I refuse. He's just, I don't know. He's wearing the goofy Malbon shoes. That probably doesn't help. I love Malbon clothes, by the way. My brother works for them, so I probably shouldn't talk shit about the shoes. But yeah, there's some ugly ass shoes that Jason Day was wearing. But like, I'd rather play Ricky Fowler all day, right? But if you're gonna take those three other chalky pieces, you can't really afford to do so, right? If you're not playing in a single entry or cash type of build. So chalk, there's a time and place for it, right? I would probably try and stick to two really chalky players, right? So rather than taking like a Xander, a Morikawa, and somebody like an Aberg together, maybe pick two of the three there, right? Your favorite two and move on. Because when you start taking three of these kind of players in the same lineup, it makes your life real tough, right? It forces your hand for your last three spots and makes you have to start clicking names like Jason Day that you don't want to play in a week like this. Not to say that he can't get there, right? But there's better names in that range, right? That you want to click on, at least that I want to click on. Again, maybe Jason Day wins this week and just I look like an absolute fool about it. But I'd rather play the Finals of the world, right? And you're not going to play a super chalky combination of these three players and then throw in like another 15% owned player in Tony Finau. Unless you're in a cash contest, right? Like unless you're okay with duplicating yourself in the field. Because in the large field GPP, this combination of four players is going to be royally chalky. It's going to be one of the chalkier combinations that you can get to. So that's the lineup construction note. Just wanted to show you guys kind of what to avoid, right, when you're building your lineups. And if there's a rule to go by, two players over 20%, right, at most. And ideally only one player over 20% in the lineups that you're building. If you're going to have two players over 20% in your lineup, make sure you have three pivots, right? Like three players that are sub 7% owned. I think that'd be a good set of rules to go by. All right, let's talk about some props now. So actually, any questions first? Yeah, let's look at the questions before we hop into that. Am I still limited on prize picks? Yeah, $25 entries, but actually, I'm not gonna elaborate on that. But yeah, still definitely limited. I don't know if you can see me winking here. Is there a more annoying player than Moore? Dude has all the talent in the world and always pisses down his leg on the weekends. Yeah, he's got upside though. Not everyone's going to be that consistent world beater week in and week out. I think he's the type of player that'll spike every once in a while. Thoughts on Sam Burns and Cam Young? I love Sam Burns. He's one of my value plays for this week, Parker. I like the fact that he's a good putter, right? Has a lot of horsepower for making birdies. So he checks a lot of those boxes. Cam Young, the guy's broken with the putter. Like he does a lot of things well on par fives. You like that around this kind of golf course. He is a high birdie percentage player, right? Even though he hasn't had a putter here in 2023, he made a lot of birdies last season, was still like top 30 on tour in the category. Actually, I think he was even top 15 on tour in the category, which is pretty outrageous given that he lost so many strokes putting. At an event where you got to get to like 25, 30 under par, I'm not sure Cam Young can win because of how shitty the putter's been, but I don't know. I've bet this guy 1,000 times, Cam Young. I'm just about giving up on him. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit more negative on his future than most other people would be. But yeah, I just realized I'm on the other sheet here. You can't see what I'm bringing up over on Excel. Yeah, he's not my favorite play. Yeah, you see what I'm saying, Antonio, right? I don't really want to say it. But yeah, you saw the wink. Tom Hoagie starting 2024 with a bang and a W. I don't know if I'd say he's going to win, Zachary. I think he's a good value play. I think I've seen crazier things happen than Tom Hoagie win, right? He won over there at Pebble at like 100-1 2 years ago. But yeah, I think he's a good DFS play. That's for sure. All right, let's refresh this underdog board and talk some props. If you want to talk about DFS, I am still totally fine with it. Just let me cycle back to it here in a few minutes. Spieth time. Oh, you know I'm playing Spieth this week, man. Is this not loading? Oh, finally. There we go. All right, so over here in Underdog, the rules with correlation are still there. And I've actually gotten word from somebody I know that works for Underdog. I will not expose my sources, though, that they will be adding payout shifts, which if you've played on Prize Picks, if you already tinkered on the board over there, you know what I'm talking about. If you take like 2 overs on birdies together on Prize Picks, they give you a slightly lower payout, right? So like a 3-man payout on Prize Picks now is like 2.75x. If you were to take like 2 overs on birdies, on Underdog, you can't even enter that, right? So if I wanted to enter this slip, like 2 overs on birdies, right, it's going to give me the error message that you can't take 2 in the same direction. So Underdog is very annoying for that. It's borderline unplayable, but the good news is that that is going to change. That is not going to be something going forward. Chandler reminded me about this prop we had on Spieth, but unfortunately, Spieth time got bumped up. So I had an over on Jordan Spieth at 5.5 birdies, but that got moved up to 6. So we probably don't want to play that now. Let's see. This, like I said, the Underdog board's not the greatest. I have a lot over on Prize Picks that I'm taking, so we'll have a lot more to talk about over there. Yeah, honestly, yeah, we're not forcing anything in on Underdog. We're just going to talk Prize Picks for the live stream. Sorry if you guys are Underdog first type of players, but talk to management about changing those rules quicker. It's on the docket. They're going to be changing it really soon for you guys, but they haven't done it yet, unfortunately. So, all right, let's talk some Prize Picks. So the site that you can actually play on now without having to deal with like not being able to put together lineups would be over here in Prize Picks. And here's what I'm talking about with the correlation rules. So if you were to take 2 overs on birdies together, they drop the payout down from 3 down to 2.7x. Is this a big deal? Yes, it is a huge deal, right? Them changing the payouts. I've had a few people on Twitter message me and say like, oh, it's like not that big of a deal, right? It's a pretty big deal. It's something that it's going to impact your return rate for sure, going out there playing golf props, but there are ways around it. And I'm kind of hesitant to show this on stream just because every time we find one of these, it ends up getting patched, but they're going to patch it anyways. So we're just going to show it on live stream. So if you take like an over on like Cam Davis birdies, right? Even if you went to strokes, right? And you took like an under on strokes, you'd get the lower payout. That doesn't apply for any birdie or better matchup. Now that makes sense, right? Because birdie or better matchups aren't correlated, but it also happens for greens and regulation and over here for pars or better. So if you're going to try and find like a normal 3x card and you still want to correlate it with the weather, you can take like one of these birdies or strokes props and you can combine it with 1 or even 2 or 3 of these greens regulation or pars. So just to give you an example, this is not a slip that I'm entering, right? If we wanted to take the over on Cam Davis and then a bunch of overs on greens, which again, I'm not recommending. I'm just showing you the payouts over here. It's 9.5x, right? So it's slightly lower than what you'd get. But like if we went over here and took, actually, did they fix it? They may have fixed it because I feel like that was supposed to be 10x. No, see, it's 8.5x. So they kind of fixed it earlier today. If you would have done that with the over on Cam Davis and then 3 overs on greens, it would have given you a 10x payout, but they haven't completely fixed it, right? It's still there at 9.5x. So the slip that I'm actually going to give you guys here for Prize Picks to go out there and tail is an over on Cam Davis birdies. It's an over on Scotty Scheffler greens regulation. A couple reasons for that. And so here's the 2 projections. If you're going to enter and tail yourself, go ahead, throw them into the shopping cart right now because we're going to cycle back over to bet the number to go through why I'm taking both of these. So again, it's Cam Davis over birdies are better, and then Scotty Scheffler over greens and regulation. So now let's hop back over to bet the number, and I'll show you guys why the hell we're taking those 2 props. So over here on bet the number, let's start with the course, right? Let's start with the averages for the last 2 years. So the scoring this year is probably going to be pretty similar to 2023 and 2022. Course looks like it's going to be in relatively low wind, should be receptive this time of year. And over the last 2 years, the birdie average has been 5.7 per round. So for a player like Cam Davis, who we'll just go over here to the custom model. Let me go over here, sort this by birdie or better percentage, and then let's find Cam Davis. And I want to sort this by, I want to change the rounds on this. I want to make this the last 24 rounds. Let's see. Okay, it's already on 24 rounds. There we go. Sweet. So let's refresh the screen and then find Cam Davis. All right. Where are you at, Cam? So here's Cam Davis, right? Down here at about 23.61%. So compared to the field average here, you can see he's not at the bottom, right? There's a whole 60 players. You got a bunch of guys down here at like, high teens in terms of birdie or better percentage. He's also not an elite player, right? He's not up there with the guys like Aber, Cole, Luke List when it comes to birdie percentage. He's down here in about the middle of the pack. And if we're using the middle of the pack statistics over the last 2 years, which again, we can just get the 2 last year's data right here, is 5.7 birdies per round. Now, if you look at his year-long stats from last year, Cam Davis is a top 20 birdie maker in this field. So it's actually even a little bit better than what you've seen over the last 24 rounds, which means he should be projecting for at least 5.7 birdies. In fact, when I ran my projections earlier, he was projected for 6.1 birdies per round. So that's about a 0.4 birdie difference right there. Anytime we have a birdie average higher than what they have guys at, if you can find just a guy that's a good birdie maker, right? Like Cam Davis, right? He's an absolute madman. He's going to be a solid prop. So the last time he played here, the only start he has at the Sentry Tournament of Champions, Cam Davis went out there and covered a 5.5 birdie prop in all 4 rounds. And that was a couple years ago, right? That was back in 2022 when the scoring average was just about what it was last year. So in comparable projection, conditions, right? He was 4 for 4 on covering that projection. And he's a good birdie maker to begin with, right? Average in an elite tier field. So that's why I took the over there. And then in terms of your green and regulation rate, it was 82.2%, which equates to right around 14.8 greens and regulation per round, right? So out of the 18 chances that you have, players were hitting just under 15 greens per round. So at 15 and a half, right? We need somebody like Scotty Scheffler to gain like 1 green to the field, right? If the average is going to be 15, right? If he can gain 1 green to the field, he's going to go out there and cover that. Well, Scotty Scheffler, I don't know if they have these stats on here. They might. Let's go to custom model. See if they have green and regulation percentage. I haven't looked for that yet, but let's see. They probably do. They have pretty much every stat you can think of on here. His green and regulation percentage is just insanely high. And I'm going to show you guys just how good it is. So let's do it the last 100 rounds. There we go. Apply. Mike good? Yeah, Mike's good. All right. So go over here, sort it by green and regulation percentage. Scotty Scheffler's green and regulation percentage is just under 75%, right? And this is a 100-round sample size, right? So this is us zooming out as much as humanly possible. That 74% is about 10% higher than your tour average, which equates to just under 2 extra greens per round, right? Now, you can't give them the whole, and it's about 1.8 extra per round, right? But you can't give them the whole 1.8 greens per round when the average is already going to be 14.8. But even if we only give them an extra 1.5 greens per round, right? I mean, that's 16.3 per round, right? His projection, right? What we're comparing it to, what we're taking over there on Prize Picks is 15 and a half, right? So he's projecting for well over that mark for about a 0.8 margin. And that's a conservative projection, right? We weren't even giving him his whole 1.8 greens and regulation gained per round. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous stuff. And if we look at let's actually just bring up Scotty Scheffler over here on the player tab. Look at these approach numbers, right? Wasn't great at the Tour Championship, but 8 strokes gained at the BMW, 7 at the Genesis Scottish, 6 at the Travelers, 12 strokes gained at the Memorial, nearly 7 at the Charles Schwab, over 5 strokes gained at the RBC Heritage. You just don't see this kind of stuff, right? So, I know it wasn't the greatest last time out. That's like the one bad start that he's had for the last 6 months on tour with the irons. You're not going to find a more consistent iron player than Scotty Scheffler, and that's what I love about this. He has such a tight range of outcomes. He's projecting for about 16.3 greens of regulation per round. It's just an absolute smash spot. So if you're just joining us, if you didn't see the prop slip that we're taking before, I think these 2 are excellent value. And then unlike a lot of the different correlated slips that you can take, right, we're taking 2 positive props here, right, 2 overs on guys. You're still getting a full 3x payout. So I kind of didn't want to let the cat out of the bag about how to get a full payout on 2 overs, but there it is, right? You take 1 birdie or better or 1 stroke prop, You match it up with one of these overs on greens or overs on pars or better, and you can get to some exposure there yourself. So if you're looking for all my different prop exposure, I believe there's 5 props that I've currently taken over there in Prize Picks. Make sure to check out the Patreon page. But my main recommendation for tomorrow, right, there's some early value that you can take, would be to wait until play starts tomorrow around midday, right, and watch the averages, right? See where the scoring average is coming in. If you're watching golf, maybe you're at work, you can, put it over to the side, right? Watch what's going on, see what's going on with play. Does it look calm out there? Do the greens look receptive? Because if it's going to play even easier than what we've seen in years past, then hammer some overs on birdies, right? These guys down here at 5.5 birdies are probably going to have some value tomorrow morning. Like, Hideki, right? Like he could be a potential over Sahith Thagala, right? If conditions are easier than we expect, our guys might want to look at for a potential over. And Hideki you might not be able to take, right? Because he tees off so early. But like, look at this, right? Hideki's going off at 1:21 Eastern time. Sahith Thagala is going off at 4:30 p.m., right? There's a whole 3-hour difference between their tee times. You're going to have time to adjust for some of the later guys out. So that's a huge edge with PGA DFS, right? Especially when we have full field events where you're going to have a full 6 hours between the 2 waves, is adjust for what you're seeing early, right? Go out there, bet the certain numbers that you need to, and that's how you can be a real profitable bettor. Like we can project ahead of time all we want, but when you have legit data to look at and that you can act on right there, that's the absolute nuts. So that's what I would recommend. Go out there, find some value before the slate if you're so inclined. But tomorrow during the middle of the day should be when you're doing most of your research for the prop process. So that's all I've got. Let's see if there's any last second questions. If not, we're going to hop on out of here. Let's see. What are my thoughts on the PGA Tour app? You think it's garbage? Yeah, hey, it gets the job done. I think it's okay, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they can improve. Like their functionality stuff that they're adding, like they added something where you can track players on your homepage. Like who cares, right? Like why are they spending their money on like giving people a homepage app when they could be trying to make things refresh faster, get rid of glitches on Shot Tracker, make sure that players are updating quicker in real time with their data? That's what they should focus on, not the home screen stuff. The greens are supersized too. Yep, 9,000 square foot. They're hey, I could hit all the greens out there. Who wins and what's the score? So my outright bets, let's cycle back to that. I mentioned that during the core plays video. I have not changed my card. I bet Xander Schauffele, I bet Terrell Hatton, and I bet Tom Kim. I also added Jordan Spieth for an outright bet because I bet him every single time he plays. So that one doesn't count, right? If I had to pick one guy to win and give you the score, tough scene out there, right? But we'll do our best for you. Xander Schauffele at -30. Make it easy. We'll pick an even number with -30. Xander Schauffele is the chalkiest bet that I'm taking this week. We'll go with that. But yeah, I'm keeping it pretty light this week. Just 4 outright bets. One of them doesn't even really count, and having some fun with it. You think Cabo wins? I could totally see it. Are they in the Patreon? They are, Parker. They're posted for all the prop tier members. Parker, I know just because I looked at your subscription the other day, you're only under the golf DFS tier. So if you're going to find those, make sure you upgrade to the prop tier as well. 28 under par. I love it. Or Scheffler. Yeah, dude. Scheffler's, I hope he has a bad week. I love the guy to death. I think he's one of the best golfers in the world, but he's 5.5 to 1 to win. I mean, like, it's just no juice to squeeze there. It's a horrible number to go out there and bet, but you're probably right. He probably does win, right? He's by far the best golfer in the field. I just hope he doesn't, right? To give some of my long shots a chance, right? Some of our numbers at like 16 to 1 or 30 to 1. I'd like to see one of those guys win. Thoughts on Aberg, potential #1 player in the world at the end of the year? Absolutely huge on him, man. Are we going to go horses for courses type approach? I would wait a few weeks for that. So I kind of mentioned that off the bat, Sam. This is the time of year where stats can be a little bit misleading, right? We haven't seen a lot of recent form yet. So give us a few weeks, Samuel. We'll be back to the whole horses for courses type of thing. But for now, it's a lot of game theory, right? Just, playing lower owned plays, play guys that are just top tier quality players. And a lot of the stats, a lot of the form coming in, you can just reset them to their averages. Is X top 5 at plus 280 a bad price? Let me give you an idea. 1 second. Let me go on Hard Rock Bet and tell you the number that I can get. Now, this is only one book, right? I should probably going on like Odds Checker to give you the number, but this will give you at least one data point. So it's a top 5 on Xander. Is that correct? You can get plus 260 on Hard Rock Bet, so it's probably not terrible, right? You're getting better value at the book that you have access to. Antonio, let me post a link down in chat for you. How's that? I'm gonna give you the. You probably already know what Odds Checker is, but hey, in case you don't, here you go. This website has a lot of the major books on it. You can do a lot of price comparisons on it for pretty much all different sports for different props. Check this out, Antonio. I'm posting down in chat right now and do a little bit of line shopping on your end. But that's all I've got here for the live stream at the Sentry. I will be doing some sort of showdown content for rounds 2 through 4. That, of course, will always be posted on my Patreon page. Prop content, right, for rounds 2 through 4 as well. Live stream up in the air, right? So we'll have the content out there for the Patreons. The only issue is the round's going to end at like 11 or 12 p.m., right? It's like, who's going to be watching content at like midnight or 1 a.m. in the morning? I'm out there for DFS. So we'll see when it comes to the live stream end. I want to do them. Maybe I'll wake up. Actually, you know what? We will be doing live streams. We'll be doing live streams around 2 through 4 because I can wake up in the morning and do them, right? Play's not starting till like noon. Be some morning live streams. So, hey, my morning crew out there, I know some of you guys are more morning grinders than anything. Grab your coffee and we'll talk some DFS rounds 2 through 4. So we'll get after it. Best of luck this week with those props, any of those outright bets you're going with, all those different DFS lineups, right? Let's take down a GBP or two. And hopefully we're back next week with some extra dough in our pockets. So like I said, best of luck. I appreciate the support here on the channel. Smash the like before you hop out of here. Hit the subscribe button. And we'll catch you guys for the round 2 stream.